Was I wrong to dig into my grandfather's past, even if it meant uncovering a secret that had been buried for over 70 years? A secret that involved a stolen military uniform and a WWII spy ring. Tell me if you would have done the same thing, because honestly, I'm still not sure if I did the right thing, even though I now know the truth. It all started with a simple act of carelessness, or perhaps destiny, depending on how you look at it. My grandfather, Arthur Art Sterling, was a man of quiet dignity. He was the kind of grandpa who always had a Werther's original in his pocket, a gentle smile, and stories about growing up during the Depression that always seemed to loop back to the importance of hard work and honesty. He never spoke much about his time in World War II, beyond a few vague mentions of being stationed in England and working in intelligence. My grandmother, bless her soul, passed away when I was very young, so I never got to hear her perspective. My dad, Arthur Jr., respected his father's silence and never pressed him for details, which meant I grew up with this unspoken reverence for my grandfather's wartime service, a silent acknowledgement that some stories were too heavy for the dinner table. I was 22, fresh out of college, and planning a cross-country move for my first real job. My grandfather, then in his late 80s, offered me the attic of his old Victorian house as a storage space for the few boxes I didn't need immediately. It was a dusty, forgotten realm, filled with the detritus of decades, faded photographs, antique furniture draped in white sheets, and the faint, sweet smell of aged paper and mothballs. One afternoon, while rummaging through a particularly large trunk, I stumbled upon it, a wooden box, locked and heavy. Curiosity, as it always does, got the better of me. I found the key tucked under a loose floorboard nearby, a tiny, ornate thing that looked like it belonged to a treasure chest. Inside, nestled amongst tissue paper, was my grandfather's military uniform. It was an officer's uniform, impeccably preserved, with the insignia of a captain. But it wasn't the uniform itself that stopped me cold. It was what was missing. The name tag was gone, and there were faint, almost invisible stitching marks where something had been removed from the breast pocket. More strikingly, there was a patch on the sleeve that I didn't recognize, a small, stylized raven. I knew enough about military uniforms to know this wasn't standard issue. This was different. Alongside the uniform, there was a small, leather-bound journal, its pages brittle with age, filled with cryptic entries in a neat, spidery hand that I recognized as my grandfather's. Most of it was in a language I couldn't understand, a mix of German and what looked like a form of code. My heart pounded. This wasn't just a uniform, this was a puzzle. I carefully removed the uniform and the journal, my mind racing. I knew I shouldn't have been in that trunk, shouldn't have opened that box, but once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. I spent the next few days devouring books on WWII military history, trying to identify the raven patch. Nothing, it was like it didn't exist. The journal was even more perplexing. I tried using online translators for the German passages, which seemed to be mostly mundane observations about weather and daily routines, interspersed with seemingly random numbers and letters. It felt like a carefully constructed smokescreen. Then came the mistake, a huge, colossal mistake that set everything in motion. My grandfather had a beloved garden gnome, a rather tacky ceramic fellow named Norman, that he insisted I help him move from the backyard shed to a more prominent spot near his prize, winning roses. While carrying Norman, I tripped. The uniform, which I had carefully draped over a chair in my room, caught on a loose nail. A small tear appeared near the collar. My heart sank. I knew I had to fix it, or at least try to. I took it to a local dry cleaner known for their alteration services, explaining it was an antique and needed delicate repair. A few days later, I received a frantic call from the dry cleaner. "Mr. Sterling, you need to come down here immediately. Your grandfather's uniform. It's been stolen." My blood ran cold. Stolen? Who would steal an old military uniform? The dry cleaner explained that someone had broken in during the night, taken nothing else, just the uniform. The police were involved, but they were baffled. It seemed like a random, targeted act. When I told my grandfather, he went pale. His usual gentle demeanor vanished, replaced by a look of steely fear I had never seen before. He simply said, "We need to find it, son. This is bigger than you know." That was the moment I realized I wasn't just dealing with a curious antique anymore. This was serious. My grandfather, who had always been so private, suddenly opened up, but only in fragments. He confessed that the uniform wasn't just his asterisk uniform. It belonged to a man named Klaus Richter, a German officer who was part of a highly secretive intelligence operation during the war. My grandfather was part of the same operation, but on the Allied side. He told me he was a double agent, working undercover within Richter's network, feeding information back to the British. The Raven patch, he explained, was the insignia of their clandestine group, known only as the Ravens. He had kept Richter's uniform as a memento, a constant reminder of the dangerous game he played. The journal was Richter's, which my grandfather had taken after the war, filled with coded messages about their operations. My grandfather, now frail but determined, told me that someone knew about the uniform. Someone knew what it represented and what it might contain. He believed it was a former member of the Ravens, or perhaps a descendant, trying to retrieve something hidden within it. He was convinced that the uniform itself held a secret, a microdot or a hidden compartment, that he had never discovered. He tasked me with finding it, telling me that the secret could still pose a threat, even all these years later. I was terrified, but also fueled by a fierce loyalty to my grandfather and a burning desire to uncover the truth. So that's the situation I was in, and I had to make a choice. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have let sleeping dogs lie, or would you have plunged headfirst into a dangerous mystery to protect your grandfather and uncover a piece of forgotten history? I decided to dig deeper. My first step was to re-examine the journal. With my grandfather's help, we went through every page, referencing names and dates with historical records. It was painstaking work. My grandfather remembered some of the codes, but others remained elusive. He explained that some of the codes were personal, almost like inside jokes between the agents, making them nearly impossible for outsiders to decipher. He also mentioned a specific phrase, the black feather, which was a trigger for a deeper level of encryption in Richter's entries. It was while rereading the German passages, focusing on the apparently mundane weather reports, that I noticed a pattern. Every time the phrase Schwarzfeder, black feather, appeared, the numbers and letters that followed were subtly different in their spacing and punctuation. This was the key. Using a cipher, my grandfather vaguely recalled, which involved counting the words in a sentence and then applying a numerical shift to the letters, I began to unravel a horrifying truth. The journal wasn't just a record of operations. It contained details about a network of sleeper agents, some of whom were still alive, living seemingly normal lives in various countries, waiting for a signal that thankfully never came. And crucially, it also contained the details of a planned assassination attempt on a high-ranking Allied official, an attempt that was thwarted thanks to my grandfather's intervention. Richter had kept meticulous records of everything, almost as a form of insurance. The uniform, my grandfather explained, was meant to be the final piece of the puzzle. He believed Richter had hidden a contingency plan within it, something that could activate the sleeper agents or expose the network if he were captured or killed. The theft confirmed his suspicions. Someone was looking for that contingency. My grandfather, with a renewed sense of urgency, contacted a former colleague, an elderly British gentleman named Alastair Finch, who had also been part of the intelligence network, though not the Ravens. Alastair, initially hesitant, agreed to help, providing me with crucial contacts within a shadowy network of retired intelligence officers. Through them, I learned about a group called the Legacy Keepers, descendants of former Ravens who were obsessed with preserving the true history of their ancestors, which sometimes involved retrieving sensitive materials. They were less historians and more guardians of secrets, and some of them had a dangerous interpretation of their ancestors' ideologies. With the information from the journal and Alastair's contacts, we narrowed down the potential thieves to a man named Klaus Jr., Richter's grandson. He was a history professor, ironically, with a deep interest in WWII espionage. He also had a known obsession with his grandfather's legacy, believing Richter was a misunderstood patriot, not a rogue agent. He had been quietly researching his grandfather's contacts for years, and it seemed he had finally connected the dots to my grandfather's involvement and the uniform. I tracked Klaus Jr. down through his university. I pretended to be a student researching a paper on WWII espionage, expressing particular interest in lesser-known groups like the Ravens. He was initially charming, eager to share his knowledge, especially about his heroic grandfather. It was sickening to listen to him glorify a man who had been willing to assassinate Allied officials. During our conversation, I casually mentioned my own grandfather's name, Arthur Sterling, and observed his reaction. His smile faltered for a split second, a flicker of recognition in his eyes, before he quickly regained his composure. He knew the confrontation was tense. I arranged to meet him again, this time at a quiet cafe, and laid out what I knew. I told him I had the journal, that I knew about the Ravens, and that I knew he had stolen the uniform. He initially denied everything, but when I produced a photograph of the Raven patch from the journal, des his facade LERN, he confessed. He believed the uniform contained a list of traitors, a true account of who betrayed the Ravens, and he wanted to clear his grandfather's name. He admitted he had been tracking my grandfather for years, had known about the uniform, and had seized the opportunity when it was sent to the dry cleaner. I demanded the uniform back. He refused, stating he was close to finding what was hidden within it. That's when I played my trump card. I told him that the journal, which he believed would vindicate his grandfather, actually contained proof of Richter's intent to commit a heinous act of terrorism against the Allies. I told him that if he didn't return the uniform, I would expose everything not just about Richter, but about the Legacy Keepers and their dangerous revisionist history. The threat of public disgrace, of his entire academic career collapsing, was enough. He agreed to return the uniform. He brought it to a neutral location, a public park. The uniform was still intact, but with a new tier, as if he had been aggressively searching for something. I thanked him, and as he walked away, defeated, I felt a strange mix of triumph and sadness. Triumph for protecting my grandfather's secret and preventing a potential disaster, but sadness for the destruction of a grandson's idealized image of his grandfather. Back home, with the uniform safely in our possession, my grandfather and I meticulously examined it. We felt every seam, every button, every fold. Finally, my grandfather, with a sigh of realization, pointed to a small, almost imperceptible discoloration on the inside of the collar, just where the name tag would have been. With a tiny pair of tweezers, he carefully pried open a hidden seam. Inside, tucked into a thin, waterproof pouch, was a single, microfilmed photograph. It wasn't a list of traitors or a contingency plan for sleeper agents. It was a photograph of a single page from a ledger. The ledger contained names, dates, and what appeared to be amounts of money, alongside cryptic codes. My grandfather recognized it immediately. It was a list of Swiss bank accounts used by the Ravens to funnel funds, not for espionage, but for a post-war escape plan for themselves and their families, a safety net if their operation failed. Richter had hidden this not as a weapon, but as a final act of self-preservation, ensuring his family's financial security if things went south. It was a testament to his ruthlessness, even in failure. We gave the information to Alastair Finch, who promised to pass it on to the appropriate authorities for investigation, though he doubted much could be done after so many decades. The uniform was eventually donated to a museum, but with the hidden compartment permanently sealed, and the true story of its secret undisclosed, protecting the privacy of those involved. My grandfather passed away peacefully a few months later, knowing his secret was safe and the potential threat neutralized. I still sometimes wonder about the moral implications of what I did. I exposed a secret, manipulated a man, and unearthed a truth that might have been better left buried. But I also protected my grandfather, prevented a potentially dangerous group from rewriting history, and, in a strange way, honored the incredible courage it took for him to be a double agent during one of the darkest times in human history. So, that's my story. It's been a wild ride, and I'm still processing it all. Like this video if you were on my side, if you think I did the right thing. Subscribe for more stories like this, where ordinary lives get tangled in extraordinary circumstances. And please, share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section. I'll see you all in the next story.